The question of how and why the United Nations is the crux of the great conspiracy to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and the enslavement of the American people within a UN one-world dictatorship is a complete and unknown mystery to the vast majority of the American people. The reason for this unawareness of the frightening danger to our country and to the entire free world is simple. The masterminds behind this great conspiracy have absolute control of all of our mass communications media, especially television, the radio, the press, and Hollywood. We all know that our State Department, the Pentagon, and the White House have brazenly proclaimed that they have the right and the power to manage the news, to tell us not the truth, but what they want us to believe. They have seized that power on orders from their masters of the great conspiracy. And the objective is to brainwash the people into accepting the phony peace bait to transform the United States into an enslaved unit of the United Nations one world government.
Fellow knowledge and truth seekers, you are tuned into the Fraud of the Fraud channel, where conspiracy facts meet conspiracy theories. I am your host, Anonymous, and today's episode is entitled The Red Pill, where we will focus on the term conspiracy theory. At this time, I'd like to introduce the author of the book, Conspiracy Fraud, Mr. Paulino.
Thank you, Anonymous. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I want to ask you, first off, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I've been studying the criminal elite for a very long time, and I see that one of the main weapons that they use in order to continue to keep people asleep is the term conspiracy theory. So whenever there's a disturbing event, whenever they do something in order to take the people off the trail, what they like to do is they like to put a tag on those of us who dissect the event, those of us who use logic, present evidence, present facts to refute or dispute whatever lies they have spewed concerning the event. Obviously 9/11 comes to mind for a lot of people. But they want to assume that everyone is a conspiracy theorist. They'll say this person is a conspiracy theorist, and the reason why they use the word theory is because the word theory is actually akin to the word belief. Because if you have a theory, it's not a fact. So as soon as the individual who's an onlooker or who hasn't really done their research and doesn't know much, but just, a person who trusts the government, trusts what the media says, they automatically assume, oh, this person's a conspiracy theorist, therefore that person's not speaking in fact. So therefore, I'm not going to bother listening or diving into what he's saying. I'm not going to research what that person is saying. I'm not going to look up what that person is saying because the government and the media are telling me that this happened. Therefore, there's no reason for me to deal with the conspiracy theorist because he has theories and the government and the media have facts. Therefore, I felt it was necessary for me to write this book and show the people the fraud of this term, conspiracy theory, and break it down and also show how past so-called conspiracy theories are no longer theories but are now admitted facts.
Now, throughout your book, you mentioned a group or an organization called the Criminal Elite and also the Unknowns. Can you tell us who they are?
Sure. The Criminal Elite, first of all, that's not something that came out of the mind of Jose Paulino. That's a term that's been rampant in the truth movement for a long time. But the criminal elite are people that you see on a day-to-day basis. They're people who you know their names. They're politicians, for instance, heads of state, CEOs of corporations, even entertainers, people that you can see. You know who they are. You know their names. They're an entity. They're a presence.
Okay.
On the contrary, the unknowns are the creme de la creme, those that are on top of it all, who are too smart or intelligent to actually let themselves be known.
So they're essentially the ones that are pulling the strings.
Yes, they're the ones who pull the strings to the criminal elite. And then within the criminal elite, you also have levels. Therefore, you'll have, for instance, a Barack Obama is not at the same level as a Zygmunt Brzezinski.
But he's considered to be the leader of the free world.
Right.
And that in its sense is a fraud?
Well, it's a fraud because, first of all, the world's not free.
Right.
And then you come to the United States where people believe that they're free, but they only profess that they're free. Whenever you corner someone and trap them and try to break down exactly what they mean by being free, they get stuck. Because as you know, and I know living in this country, we need permission to do virtually anything. And we have to also pay taxes to a government that is basically criminal. And if you refuse to pay those taxes, they will call upon disillusioned police officers to commit violence against you so that you can pay up. Same thing as the mafia.
That's very interesting. You mentioned 9/11.
Yes.
Later on in this broadcast, I want to get your take on it. But do you have any other examples of so-called conspiracy theories?
Well, there's been so many things that have happened that we in the truth movement or the truth community or whatever, us conspiracy theorists as they like to call us, have been talking about for a long time, and many of them have now come into fruition. The first thing that comes to mind is the microchip. Very long time ago, early 90s, before microchips were just science fiction. Many people would say that we're insane, we're crazy, there's no such thing, how could that be? Now microchips exist. But what the criminal elite like to do is always turn and flip things around. So therefore now they know that their agenda is spearing its ugly head. So therefore what they have to do is that they have to turn it and reverse things and say, well, okay, microchips exist, they're here now. However, they're only here to help you. They're here so that if you go to the hospital, that the hospital can read that chip and know exactly what your diagnosis is or know exactly what you're allergic to and yada, yada, yada. And they'll always give you the positives of their criminal acts or what they're about to do. Do you follow?
Yeah.
Another thing that also comes to mind is the USS Liberty, the attack on the USS Liberty, which we for a long time were saying that Israeli fighter ships attacked a U.S. Navy ship with knowledge that it was a U.S. Navy ship. For a long time they were saying no, it was a mistake. Israel didn't know it was an American Navy ship, and now that's coming to fruition. We have Operation Susanna. We have Operation Ajax. We have the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which led us into the Vietnam War.
Okay.
I mean, there's just countless and countless. Of course, the most infamous now with the 9/11 that's come out is Operation Northwoods, as you know, where the government was planning terror attacks within the United States and outside of the United States to attack U.S. Navy ships and blame it on Cuba just to provoke a war with Cuba. We also know now, obviously, that there were no weapons of mass destruction. We knew that beforehand, obviously. No one wanted to listen. And it just goes on and on. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The list is endless. It's just endless.
Now, in your book, you deem these events to be a term called false flag. Can you please explain further what that term means?
Right. Well, the term basically originated out of the theory that the criminal elites had, which was attacking another country but flying the colors of a different country. You follow?
Yeah.
And all the incidents that I mentioned were all false flag operations, where it wasn't clear as to who the aggressor was. Do you follow?
Yeah.
And this is what they like to do. They always like to work behind the scenes. Meanwhile, they'll support both sides of a conflict.
Okay. That's
For instance, the Iran-Iraq war. The United States and Britain were supporting both Iran and Iraq, supplying weapons to both countries. Meanwhile, acting as friends to both of them, behind both of the countries.
But the one country didn't know about the
Exactly.
other country in that sense?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
I follow.
The one country did not know about the other country's actions.
That is unbelievable.
And this is all documented. This is all facts. This is nothing that's a conspiracy theory. You can look this up in the encyclopedias. You can Google it. You see the declassified documents. Go into the government's own websites. Go into the CIA's own websites. And this is all admitted. This is nothing that's a conspiracy theory, as they like to use. And I just wanted to say, Anonymous, that they'll still call you a conspiracy theorist. Even if you bring up something that they have already admitted. They'll still refer to you as a conspiracy theorist because they know that the average person wouldn't bother to even look up the information.